Well, thank you all for shining back at me. It's really helpful when you have smiling faces to be able to talk to. And today I am going to talk about the power of illumination. Do you know what illumination is? I went to Charles Fillmore's Metaphysical Bible Dictionary. Since we're a metaphysical teaching, what's the metaphysical meaning of illumination? And it's spiritual understanding. It's an intuitive knowing. That's what illumination is. That's what intelligence is. And so when we become illuminated, we're tapping into our spiritual understanding. So the first point that I have is that we have to be aware of where we are. What path are we on? Are we on a spiritual path for our lives? Or are we on the path of, maybe we'll call it the common person. Some people call it race consciousness, but then we get into all the race issues, and that's not really what we mean by race consciousness. What we mean is the common thought of society. So there are different rules that society has for us. And one of those is, you have to work. Work is going to be hard. Well, really, work should be joyful. If you're really doing your passion, if you're living your passion and living your work, wouldn't it be joyful?
Absolutely.
How fun is that? I'll tell you, my son, who I love him dearly, but, as a father, it's like, you're really going to have that job? For the last 9 years, he has been the mascot for the Baltimore Orioles. He loves his job. And he does a great job at it. It makes him shine. He can do so much as a mascot, and he loves it, and it lights him up. And he knows that that is his right path at this time. And I think, how many people hate their jobs? They go to work every day and they're not happy. And so what do they spread? Unhappiness around them. And what do they see? Unhappiness around them. If they're on a spiritual path, they would look much different, wouldn't they? So what kind of path are we on? And what's going on our path? There are luminaries in life. Have you heard somebody say, "You really light up my life"? I think that was a song, wasn't it? Oh, that fit into it. And we just sang, "You are the light of the world, and you shine so bright." And so when we're aware that we're on a spiritual path, we light up that path. Other people want to follow us. They're attracted to what we have. And the secret is, they have it too. Because that light comes from within, and it's within each one of us. And so, our first thought here is about illumination. Do you know what path you're on, and how illuminated are you? I was in Denver recently for a conference, and because Denver is 2 hours behind us, I could get up in the morning and exercise before the conference started. I'm not a good morning person here, but 2 hours earlier, or when they're 2 hours later, it made it a little easier. So I would go down to the fitness room and I would be on the elliptical machine. And it was dark when I got there. Well, the windows of the fitness room looked out to the west. And it was dark when I started. But as I kept on the elliptical machine, the sun would start to come up. Well, the sun was coming up in the east, of course, and the building blocked that, so I couldn't really see the sunrise, but my world began to illuminate as the sun rose. And at first, when there was just a little bit of light coming out, I thought, ooh, it's a really cloudy day. This doesn't look very good. But as the sun rose higher and higher, I realized those aren't clouds. Those are huge mountains. And then as the sun got higher, I saw there was snow on top of some of those mountains. And the monsters that started to show up as there was low light that I thought looked really scary became trees as there was more light. And the more the sun came up, the more I could see that some of the trees were fir trees. Some of them had leaves on them. And then I began to be able to see birds flying around. And it was a beautiful day. But my perception changed as my illumination became brighter and brighter. Have you ever felt dark on your path and wondered why everything looked a little scary? You had the diagnosis come. You had the relationship end. You had the hiccup in the job. And then, as you became more illuminated, you found great strength in that. You found that there were blessings there. And so illumination takes us into understanding. So when we're on a path, we have to know what path we're on. Are we looking for the spiritual significance in our life? Are we following a spiritual path? And I think probably most people here are, or you wouldn't be meeting with us in this room, would you? You're at least aware that you have a choice for a spiritual path. So that's one thing that we can look at and be blessed about, is what path are we on and what do we see? While I was in Colorado, I heard this woman sing. She had a beautiful voice, and she was blind. And her song was, "If You Could See With My Eyes." And I thought, how bold of this woman who's blind to sit here in front of this whole group of people and sing, "If You Could See With My Eyes." And it reminded me, we think we're seeing with physical eyes, but do we really look with our spiritual eyes? It's important to cultivate that, because that's what takes us into the light, is when we know that we're on that spiritual path and we're seeing with spiritual eyes. That's what brings about intelligence in our life. And intelligence is the spiritual understanding. It's that intuitive knowing that yes, this is right. There is a blessing here. Regardless of what things might look like with my physical eyes, from my spiritual eyes, I see that it's all whole, perfect, and complete. There is a God that's behind everything going on, and that God loves me. That God loves you. And that God wants us to be happy. It's true. So how do we remember this? How do we remember that we're on a spiritual path? How do we remember that the darkness is not always bad? I think we get programmed to think that darkness is bad. Think about this. When you put the seed in the soil, it's in the dark. It takes that darkness for the seed to germinate, to grow into the plant, to produce the fruit. So darkness is not always bad. Sometimes we need to rest. Don't we shut our eyes, turn off the lights, go into the darkness so that our bodies can repair themselves, and so we can really shine, because we come up out of that darkness. We come out into the light. And so darkness is not always bad. It's that ebb and flow of life. We give and we receive. And so we have to live in that darkness sometimes to find greater blessings, to find more strength. See if I go the right way. So how we remind ourselves of this is we do our spiritual practices. There are many spiritual practices, not just the ones I have here, but prayer and meditation are common spiritual practices for many people. And so that's a good way to connect ourselves. Spiritual practice is just anything that you do that reminds you that there is a power greater for you in the universe, and you can use it. It's a way that you connect with Spirit, with the God of your understanding. So some people will sit in the silence. Some people do their morning prayers and their evening prayers. Some will read prayers out of a book, and that really connects them to God. Some people will journal. Doing journaling about their thoughts allows more and more to come. Some people do sacred service. And when we serve others, that's a good way to connect us with the heart of God, to make us feel one with that power and presence that Aggie has talked about in each one of her spiritual mind treatments today. Connecting with the one. And when we recognize that, that's spiritual practice. I've told you that I do exercise, and when I'm at the gym here at home, often I'll be on the elliptical machine or the treadmill, which is up on the second floor of the gym, and I'm looking at all these people down below me that are pushing and pulling all these weights and lifting things and all this, and I think, if I spent that much time doing my spiritual practice, how great would my life be? So to me, exercise is kind of a spiritual practice. And so it's something I do for myself, but I also find that many times it's very meditative for me. Because I can be doing whatever it is, walking or on the treadmill, but my mind is really going to a spiritual place. I can see with spiritual eyes even when I'm doing something physical. It's the same thing with sacred service. When you're helping that neighbor that needs help, when you're sitting there in the hospital with somebody holding their hand, you're doing sacred service. It's a physical act, but you're doing something very spiritual. So what path are we on? And are we aware of the path we're on? Do it with awareness. And sacred service can be having fun. There is a song, and Rick can probably tell us what it is, that's, oh, I know what it is. Amazing Things. Janice Stanfield, and she says, sometimes deepest answers come when you're out there having fun. So you know, it's not always about just sitting there looking so pious. Sometimes it's when your hands are in the dirt. Sometimes it's when you're cleaning out a house, when you're cleaning out a drawer. That's when all of a sudden that flash of insight comes. That's our spiritual selves seeing with spiritual eyes. Are we true to really who we are and what we want to be? As we do our spiritual practice, I know many of you are probably involved in the 66-day challenge that we have going on here at CSL Palm Beaches. We started last Thursday, and now through the end of the year, if you didn't get started, get started. Now through the end of the year, we're doing something different in our life every day to create a new habit. Some experts say that it takes 66 days to do the habit, to create a new habit, get our minds trained to that. So I know for several people here, your new habit is some sort of a spiritual practice. And what a great habit to have, right? Being in some kind of spiritual practice. So try a variety of things. Have fun with it. Dance with the dance of life and the dance of spirit. So to be in spiritual practice, to be the light to the world, I really think we have to be authentic. I love this lady. Doesn't she look authentic?
Yes.
She's having fun. Do we have fun in our lives? Do we let ourselves go so that we can really just shine? Just be who we are called to be? It's a good thing, yes, it is. And sometimes I've not been very good at that. I grew up in a family where they told me, no, you don't think that way. This is what you think. And I always thought, well, how do they know what I think? Because what they were saying was never what I was thinking. And so I lived for years for my family, trying to be the good boy, the good person, and I was always failing at it because their expectations were not authentic for me. I wasn't the athletic boys that my brothers were. I wasn't the straight A student that my sister was. And that's where their expectations fell. And so it left me feeling ashamed because I never met their expectations. My family wasn't one that could embrace that I was different from the others and encourage that difference. It's taken me years of therapy and 12-step groups, friends encouraging me to be myself, to get out of that shame and to move into the light of who I really am. And so to stand and say, this is who I am. And to know that this is my authentic self. And when I hear myself, I mean, I've been a nurse for close to 40 years. Maybe more, who knows? And to change from being a nurse, which has been an identity for a long time, to being a minister. Ooh, people are going to ask me questions. People come to me with their problems. They ask me about God. And my God may be different than theirs. But I can be authentic. And I can share what I know. And I can share the love and the compassion that I have felt in life with others. And that lights me up. That allows me to be my authentic self. I like this quote here by Ralph Waldo Emerson. To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. To be yourself when the world's trying to make you something else, that's a great accomplishment. We have to be aware. Are we living authentically? Are we being who we want to be? I had to spend time getting clear on who did I come here to be. And those lessons are not always easy to learn. I was going to visit my mother once. Some of you may have heard this story. And I had a practitioner friend get right in my face. Because when I talked about going to visit my mother, I must have rolled my eyes. I can't imagine doing that. And she recognized that there was some angst there, and so she got right in my face and she said, Rick, how are you going to show up to your mother? Are you going to show up as venom? Ooh, that's a little biting, isn't it? Or are you going to show up as love? I made the decision I wanted to show up as love. And it changed that whole interaction with my mother. And I got to the point where I can say thank you to her. Thank you. You gave me life. Now, in our philosophy, we're responsible for our lives. We create our own life. And so in doing that, I know she gave me life. Thank you. Now it's up to me to make it the best life I can. So no more of this blaming you because you didn't like the way I was when I grew up. I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't athletic enough. I can live in that story, but that doesn't really serve me well. So my story is, I'm a creative, strong, creative, spiritual being. And as that, I live authentically. And I can show up to people as love, as compassion, as joy. And in doing that, my world is so much better. And yours will be too, if that's how you're looking at life and living life. Life is always lived from the inside out. So what we think about within ourselves is what we're giving out to the world. That was a little strong for me to understand, because I can't blame somebody else when I'm living from the inside out. If I'm taking responsibility for myself, for my actions and what I do, then it's all about how I stand up authentically in the world. If I see with different eyes, I see differently. I did find a little study that talked about authentic people and 20 habits of authentic people. Don't worry, I'm not going to reach all 20. But I want to give you a few of them. Authentic people never apply advice given without first consulting their inner guide. Does it resonate with me? Thank you for sharing. And then you go home and say, does that resonate with me? Don't believe anything I say. I mean, seriously. Don't believe anything I say. See what resonates with you. Authentic people are driven to action by their inner motor rather than by external triggers. And that helped me understand that's how I lived as a child and a young adult, with external triggers. Now I can live according to my inner motor. Authentic people are proud of their unique traits that make them stand out from the crowd. I think she stands out from the crowd. They allow their friends and people they meet to show their true selves. We're not trying to make everybody alike. Authentic people make the most out of the situations they find themselves in, whether they perceive them to be bad or good. Authentic people don't judge others because they look beyond the external facade of words and appearances. Authentic people don't complain as they take full responsibility for their lives. Authentic people have high self-esteem and appear confident because they have nothing to hide. And the last one I'll share is authentic people see the unity and interconnectedness of all life and hear the harmonious symphony of the world in all of life's situations. Are you hearing harmony in your life? Are you seeing good? It's up to you. Are you showing up as who you came here to be? Have you thought about who you came here to be? Let me give you that challenge for this week. Think about, how do you want to show up in the world? Who have you come here to be? So you can let your light shine. From Thich.Han, to be beautiful means to be yourself. You don't need to be accepted by others. You need to accept yourself. How about that? To be beautiful means to be yourself. You don't need to be accepted by others. You need to accept yourself. That means we can't blame somebody else. We have to accept ourselves. And that's the forgiveness piece. Reverend Marcia has been talking about forgiveness all month too. Every week there's, she'll give her little talk and there's a little tweak about forgiveness. Where is that? Well, forgiveness comes in here because maybe we haven't lived like we want to. Maybe we haven't been our true, authentic selves. It's really okay. Forgive yourself and move into that higher calling. See with your spiritual eyes. Activate through spiritual practice that God within that wants to come out, that wants you to live your highest and best, to be all that you can be. And when you do that, you can accept yourself. So in closing, what path are you on? Are you living on a spiritual path? Are you guided by divine intelligence? By the one power and one presence that's all around you and aware of that? Use your spiritual practices so that you align yourself with spirit. You align yourself with the truth of your being, who you want to be in this world. Live authentically. And then you show up being the person that you came here to be. You show up being the unique expression of the divine that you really are. Our final quote from Norman Vincent Peale says, "The life of inner peace, being harmonious and without stress, is the easiest type of existence." Think about that. The life of inner peace. To be at inner peace, we have to accept ourselves, right? We have to be willing to go inside. And as we do that, if we're harmonious and stress-free from the world, we let that fall away because we're looking with spiritual eyes, knowing that we're guided, guarded, and protected by the one power and one presence that we call God, Spirit, divine intelligence, love, the universe, whatever name we want to put on it. That's the easiest type of existence. And so I invite you to give some thought to who you want to be authentically. How do you want to show up in the world? And to live your highest and best life. So it's easy and it's fun.